Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I'm continuing my series that I'm doing on a physician called the Dancing Doctor, Dr. Wendell Boutte. We talked about Icelia Cornelius, the nurse that was getting ready to get married, and she went to go and get some liposuction and some Botox. She ended up brain damaged, and in my last video, I told you that unfortunately I found out she passed away. Well, here's another set of Dr. Boutte's patients that were injured by this particular doctor. Just imagine, right? You go in for liposuction, and then 18 hours later, you wake up disoriented. You're in a Comfort Inn hotel. You have a sandwich, a McDonald's sandwich in your hand with a bite out of it. You don't know where you are, how you got there, and who actually took a bite out of that sandwich. This is 18 hours after you've had surgery. Well, that's what happened to Missy McDonald. Okay, that's exactly what happened to her. So we'll go to the video. This is for fair use for educational and commentary purposes by way of the Fair Use Act.
And from sisters, Christine Dolly and Mitzi McFarland.
How did you feel when you looked in the mirror?
Horrified. Like, what have I done to myself?
After the surgery, my left side looked like something out of a Frankenstein monster movie.
The sisters say they ordered a high-end fat reduction procedure, but wound up like this after conventional liposuction. McFarland says her surgery ran so long, Boutte dumped her at a Comfort Inn when it was over.
I was put to sleep, and then I woke up some 18 hours later in the hotel bedroom with a McDonald's sandwich in my hand, one bite out of it.
Now, I can't make this stuff up. Now, the Georgia Composite Medical Review Board, which is a very strong board, when I say strong, politically influenced, lots of influence, okay? They knew about these complaints prior to some of other victims getting injured by her. So they had some of this information in their lap, you know, meaning some of this documentation that they could go over prior to other people getting injured. It is my opinion that had they made any type of reviewed it, made a decision, some patients could have been saved from some of this. I don't know if Icelia Cornelius could have been one of them, but obviously some patients could have been saved from being injured.
Who checked her into the motel?
Dr. Boutte would have done that.
Boutte employee.
So this is Dr. Boutte's employee, Lee Brown. This is the deposition that she's undergoing. She looks a little tired and sleepy, you know. That's just my opinion. Because you want to come to a deposition, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ready to answer the questions, but I digress. Lee Brown is basically saying that Dr. Boutte checked the patient into a hotel. How is that ethical? Like, why not call the family members or something? This is just disgusting. You know what? Let's finish.
Lee Brown testified about the hotel. Brown is listed on the website as the clinical nurse manager with 20 plus years in the nursing profession. Listen to Boutte's own admission.
So you don't believe that representing that Lee Brown as clinical nurse manager is misleading?
No.
Okay. Lee Brown is not a nurse, correct?
Correct.
This is the debauchery. This is my opinion. That's just an out and out lie and misrepresentation. If you put that on your website, if you put something on your website that's not true, to me, that's just a lie. Misrepresentation is just another fancy word for a lie. And I'm starting to understand, and I will tell you my story, but I wanted you to see other people's story, because there's some stories that we haven't even heard of, because these people are either deceased, they've walked away and are wounded, broke, maybe even homeless. Their career shattered because they've been injured in some sort of way, maybe disabled in a nursing home someplace. You'll never hear their stories. So I'm telling you the stories that we know that are out in the forefront, and I'm going to even tell you my story. I had to go and heal because I was really, really angry about what happened to me, but I'm at such a better place now. And it's important for us to talk about these things, to educate our communities, so that way when they go in for these procedures, they know what to look for, what to ask for, what red flags to look for, and when it's time to just walk away, cut your losses, and find another physician, doctor, nurse, or lawyer. Because as a result of my situation, I've learned a lot about lawyers, medical malpractice. I've learned a lot about physicians, the Georgia Medical Composite Review Board, as well as the Georgia Nursing Review Board. I've learned a lot. So let's finish listening, but I will tell you my story in the upcoming weeks. I want all of you guys to like, share, and subscribe, because a lot of times we need to give voices to the voiceless. A lot of times when people are injured, they don't even know they're injured by the doctor, nurse, or even the lawyer. Sometimes they feel that these people are so powerful, they don't even know who to go to complain to. And if you have a medical malpractice case and something is done to you, and the hospital, the doctor, or some injury you have received, you have a very short window of time, 2 years from the time of the injury, or 2 years from the time you find it out. And why I say find out, say for instance, a doctor leaves a sponge in you. You don't find out till 3 years later. You can still file a lawsuit because you had no idea that sponge was sitting up inside of you. But I digress. Let's finish and go back to the tape, shall we?
I'm angry and I'm appalled that they would allow her to continue to practice under these circumstances.
Boutte is a board-certified dermatologist, but labels herself Atlanta's leading cosmetic surgeon. It's legal.
When you are licensed to practice medicine.
Now, this man right here is Dan DeLoach. He is the chairperson of the Georgia Medical Composite Review Board. These are the people who review medical licenses and determine whether you'll get a license, whether it'll be suspended or revoked. The information about Dr. Boutte was before his board, right? He's the chairperson. They knew about some of this, but listen to what he has to say. Now I know Dr. DeLoach, he's a plastic surgeon, I think from Savannah, and he's probably very well qualified and very well connected. But who's speaking for the patients who entrust their lives? Doctors take an oath, right? An oath to do no harm, right? To heal people, to help people. And nurses take an oath as well, to do no harm, to heal people as well. And lawyers take oaths as well, to represent their client to the best of their ability. And people hold doctors, nurses, and even lawyers at a high regard, because you have to go to school to get that education, and those are specialty areas. But listen to what Dan DeLoach, or is it DeLoach, has to say.
In Georgia, you're licensed to practice medicine and surgery. It says so right on your license.
Dr. Dan DeLoach, board-certified plastic surgeon, chairs the medical board.
I do think that there is a tiny minority of physicians who are practicing beyond their scope.
While not commenting on Boutte directly, the medical board chair denied any foot dragging.
You don't want to rush to judgment and end up making an error that could be very professionally harmful.
Of 5 recent malpractice.
Excuse me. I digress, and I'm going to interject. He made a comment that we don't want to rush to judgment that could be professionally harmful to the doctor. Well, Mr. Dan DeLoach and doctors and nurses and everyone who has a license, this wasn't an issue of her really operating outside of her scope, because the law allowed her, even though she was a board-certified dermatologist, it allowed her to do liposuction. It allowed her to do these things. So she wasn't operating outside of her scope. It was the issue of her not operating, the issue with deviating from the standard of practice, delays in treatment, those type of thing, malpractice, and maybe even negligence. That was the issue with her, not so much of her operating outside of her scope. Me personally, if I'm going to get breast surgery, I don't want a dermatologist operating on me, okay? If I'm going to get a foot surgery, I don't want a dermatologist. I want you to have worked on breasts, toes, feet, the specialty areas. But the law allowed Dr. Boutte to go ahead on and perform surgeries, even though she was board certified in dermatology, but she wasn't board certified plastic surgeon, Okay. You want a board certified plastic surgeon because they get rotations. They go through different things. You know, they get in-depth training. So clearly from some of her results, did you guys see the liposuction after effects? They look like Freddy Krueger. You know, it's horrible. But it really kind of infuriated me to hear him say, well, we don't want to rush to judgment. Well, Dan DeLoach, I'm here to say this. Maybe if somebody would have rushed to even review what was going on with her multiple and plethora of dancing videos, maybe somebody like Isilia may be alive today because she passed away last year. Maybe she would have gotten married and gotten her PhD and maybe would have still been a nurse. What about her career? What about her family? What about, you know, rushing to judgment to save the life of others, the oath that you took? What about that? I'm just saying. Let's go on.
Settlements. Boutte listed only 2 for her state doctor profile.
Dr. Boutte?
She would not talk.
Somebody needs to hold her accountable.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly. Somebody needs to hold her accountable.
Now, the executive director of the Composite Medical Board told me if they take any action against Dr. Boutte, it will not come outside a regular board meeting. The next board meeting is scheduled for June the 7th, and no agenda has yet been posted.
So what that means is, and then this is Jim Strickland. Shout out to Jim Strickland at WSB TV because he investigated this some years back. So basically the board said, look, if we're going to make any decision, it's not going to come outside of our meetings. We are not going to hold any emergency meetings. It's just going to have to wait. So basically you have information that harm could still be going. This doctor is operating, has a schedule for the month. Phone calls are being made, you know, to the hospitals. People come into the hospitals with infections after coming to her office. But you guys are going to wait until your next meeting, which could be a month away. I don't know how often they have them, but let's just say it's 30 days away. To me, that is just egregious. It is that to me is when I started seeing how this thing is done here in Georgia, because not all, let me be very clear, not all medical review boards are one and the same. Because I started looking at some information about the Georgia Composite Medical Review Board, and they really, in my opinion, dragged their feet. And why? There was a case where there was a physician. I can't make this stuff up, okay? And I'll discuss that story because it lets me know what is going on with the Georgia Composite Medical Review Board. There was a physician who put a hit on one of his patients or someone from another state, but had a license here in Georgia. Another state was like, we're going to pull his license. But Georgia was like, nah, he could still work. Have you ever? They knew about this situation with this man, allegedly, because I need to go and look. But it appears that the Georgia Composite Medical Review Board, we're not talking about Dr. Boutte, I'm veering off. But I'm just letting you know how they operate. There was a doctor who put a hit. Do you not hear me? A hit to unalive one of their patients. That hit did not go down. It got found out. And that doctor lost his license in that state. They were like, no, you can't operate because that's not somebody that's really stable. I don't want somebody operating on me like that because if I say something wrong or do something wrong, that means you're going to put a hit out on me. Well, Georgia said, no, he can still operate knowing what was going on. So you're going to tell me that there's not a problem? There is a problem. As I go down this rabbit hole, you'll start to see. But they knew about this situation with Dr. Boutte. They knew.
Reporting live downtown Atlanta.
So, guys, I am just telling you that the rabbit hole goes deep. And why I'm reporting on these stories, because there's no one giving a voice to some of the voiceless. There are people who get injured, maimed, and harmed, and they don't know what to do. They find out that they've been harmed and that it might have been a malpractice case where they could have gotten some compensation for pain and suffering, but found out that it's been too long, right? Because you have a 2-year window, or from the time you discover the situation in certain situations, right? This is in the state of Georgia. I don't know about other states. So for medical malpractice, they give a very small window. And I think they really do that on purpose, because by the time you get home from surgery, figure out something's wrong, get it corrected, a year's passed. And it'll take them 3-4 months just to get your medical records. So you're talking about a year and a half. So in order for you to get that case filed in the court, Time is of an essence. And then there's some people, unfortunately, who are in nursing homes right now, don't know they've been injured by the doctor. Family members are lay people. They don't know anything about anything. They just know their loved ones are hurt, and they don't know how they got hurt. And who do they go to? And then, unfortunately, there's the voiceless, truly, who are deceased and have been injured by doctors, physicians, and even nurses. Right? And nobody's speaking for them. And I know somebody out there listening right now has had a family member. You thought something happened to them at the doctor's office. All of a sudden they dropped dead from a outpatient procedure where nothing should have gone wrong. But maybe they got the wrong dose of medication. Maybe too much anesthesia was given. People are human. So mistakes do happen. But you didn't know to go and get the medical records, and nobody knows. Sometimes you just don't know what to do, and you have a very short window of time. And then with medical malpractice, something that I learned with my own case, yes, you got to actually establish that there was a deviation from the standard of care, but that deviation then was the causation for the patient's injury and harm. So you have to prove causation. So I know a little bit. I'm not a lawyer, but I review medical records, for a very, very long time. I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and I can look at a medical record, and see where things have gone wrong. However, I'm doing this to bring highlight to these cases. This case comes from 2000. Some of these cases are from 2015 and 2016. And lives have been altered, changed, destinies altered. People are deceased, families torn apart, houses lost, financial, bodies disfigured. People are traumatized. Ask me how I know. And I thank God that I am still here to be able to speak and tell some of these stories, not only for these people, but like I said, down the road, I will tell my story. There's a time, there's a season for everything. And it wasn't the right time some years back to do that, because I wasn't healed. I was very angry. And just like that lady said in the video, if somebody harms you and they harmed you, this woman is literally sitting up there misrepresenting the fact that there's somebody in her office taught her as a registered nurse when she's none of the above. That's a bold-faced lie. And so I'm starting to see some common fabrics in what some of these doctors do in their practices. I'm wondering if there are a lot of doctors who have practices where they have fake nurses or touting them as a fake nurse, but they're really not. The doctor where I had my legal lawsuit against, she had a nurse in her office. She was a registered nurse, but her license had lapsed, which means she wasn't a registered nurse. Because if your license is not active, right? If your license is not active, you're operating outside of the scope of your practice. She was doing all type of procedures on me, calling in medications to the local hospitals. So yes, she was operating outside. So I'm wondering if this, after seeing Dr. Boutte and researching other doctors, I'm wondering if this is a common practice. I hope it's not. And I do agree with Dr. Deloach that there's probably a small number of doctors who operate outside of their scope, but this wasn't about scope of practice. This was about negligence and malpractice and deviating from the standard of care. And to me, it was just cruel punishment, and it was, and her conduct was it was not befitting of a physician. It just wasn't. It wasn't safe for the patient, because a lot of her patients got infections. I wonder why. Because when you go into a hospital and you go into surgery, there's something called a sterile field. And you want to keep things sterile so that the patient doesn't get contaminated and there's no cross-contamination. You twerking and dancing and rapping and acting a fool. How is that going to maintain sterility? Maybe Dr. Boutte should have been a rapper. Maybe she should have been a DJ. Maybe that was the calling that she really truly had. But she endangered the lives, really, of many of her patients. And some of them are disfigured, never to go back to the way they were before ever again. Some of them are probably depressed, taking medication, counseling. I can tell you one thing. I'm so thankful. And those people who have undergone situations like this, please, illicit if you're working, your employee assistance program, please get the therapy, because it's very traumatic when you go through something like this and you don't know who to reach out to. You can't go to the doctor. The doctor has harmed you. You lose kind of trust in things, and no one wants to hear you. And then you have people like Dan DeLoach, the head of the Georgia Composite Medical Review Board, saying things like, oh, well, we don't rush to judgment. But was anybody rushing to judgment for those two women? Did anybody rush to judgment for Miss Cornelius, who is now deceased? Huh? Did anybody rush to judgment when you guys knew that this woman was acting a fool, and so unprofessional? And anybody who's a physician who looked at those videos would have said, look, let me give this woman a call. Ma'am, you need to go ahead on and go sit down somewhere, because we're about to pull your license. And guess what? There's some states, there was another dancing doctor too, but that state revoked her license. I don't know what's going on in Georgia, but anyway, I'm going to keep my foot right here on these YouTube streets and report these stories. And if you have any stories of family members, if you're in litigation, I don't want to know. But if it's out of litigation and it's been some malpractice, maybe in the states of New York and Georgia, or if, something has happened years ago, you can email me. My email will be in the description. So y'all, I will be continuing this story, and thank you guys for joining me. Please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell. And if you have any stories that you know of, just send it to me in the email. I'll leave my email in the description box, and you can email me those stories, because I want to be the advocate. A lot of times when something happens to people, they find their passion, they find what they have been, their passion, or what their destiny is, or what they've been called to do. And I want to advocate and be the voice of those who are voiceless, those who may think they may have been harmed, because there's a very short window, guys. And when your window closes, you can no longer sue to get anything. And sometimes it's just trying to get the finances together. You're not going to ever be what you were before, in a sense of, if you're disfigured, but you may be able to get some compensation for your pain, your suffering, and for maybe medical care that you may need for the rest of your life. But I want you guys to send me the stories, like, share, subscribe. Let me know how you like this series, okay? And please comment down below. I love when you guys comment, and let me know what you think. All right, you guys, take care, and thank you so much for the support. Bye-bye.